Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about a really troubling whistleblower report filed by a former DOJ lawyer to detail allegations of some flagrant misbehavior by Emil Bove, who was, till recently, Donald Trump's henchman in the Department of Justice and the guy who's put on the brass knuckles to work Trump's will as against the Constitution. Before that was Trump's personal lawyer in some of his personal criminal trials, for example, in New York, and is now a nominee for the Court of Appeals. That's the second of three levels in the federal judiciary in the Third Circuit, and will have his hearing tomorrow. All right. We remember, I think, the story. It is a harrowing story by an attorney who had been in the Department of Justice, Erez Ruveni. He'd been there for 15 years. He was a senior person in the Office of Immigration Litigation. That's its own office. He had won awards for good service in the first Trump administration, but he was the unlucky guy who stepped on the mine that someone was going to have to step on and ruined his career. And the guy who really helped ruin it is Bove. All right. Remember what happens here. This has to do with Abrego Garcia and the administration's concession that they had sent him down mistakenly, that they didn't have the order authority as they had said. And this was a big brouhaha in front of Judge Zinnes, and Ruveni was the guy, the luckless guy, because this is what's happening. The career attorneys have to go in and represent the United States, and they've been told, certainly early in the administration, it seems that they've been told, don't say anything, or we're not going to tell you, or the dog ate it, whatever, and put themselves in not just embarrassing, but to potentially career-ending position. Because if you violate your duty of candor to the court, honestly, that's grounds for being fired and even disbarred. So this guy is there, and the court asked, did the United States make a mistake? And he answered candidly, as is required by his duty of candor. And he said yes, which, by the way, also was the account of several others who were forced to it, including Trump's Solicitor General himself, Todd Sawyer, who said the same thing. So Ruveni was not out there in any unique way. Nevertheless, the Attorney General of the United States put him quickly, with Bove's assistance, on administrative leave for a few days for not, and said in some euphemistic way, you didn't serve your true mission, which is Donald Trump, the president. That takes priority. Completely false, completely wrong, completely horrible sort of change for how things have always been to people in the Department of Justice. And then a few days later, they just fire the guy. And really what he did wrong was tell the truth to the court, which he's required to do, and any DOJ person would want to do. All right. He already filed a 27-page report within DOJ, which you can do to report misconduct by somebody within DOJ, and that is Emil Bove, as I'll explain. Now, there's all these kinds of processes, and in an honest Department of Justice with a viable, independent Office of Professional Responsibility, there'd be a report and a finding, and that might be the end of the DOJ career, if not subsequent bar discipline for Emil Bove. Instead, he is being rewarded for his corruption and there's no two ways around it, violation of his oath to the Constitution, which he had to take when he came in and held this fairly high up job within the department, the principal associate deputy attorney general, the number one aide to the deputy And he is now instead getting the reward of a Third Circuit appointment. At least he's been nominated, and Trump will fight for him. Okay, we've known some of the basics here, but the 27-page report, which has now come out, maybe was leaked. You have a very strong pushback from the administration doing what they, what's disgusting because it's a stock in trade and it's a lie, but basically dirtying him up as a disgruntled whistleblower. What happened to him is he was a solid DOJ lawyer who got forced, strong-armed into doing something improper and wouldn't do it. So in addition to what I said about his being candid, he also has a line in one of the briefs that the law requires and was instructed to take it out, and he declined, and that also was a precipitating factor. And there, Bove was really very much involved. Okay, we have these series of meetings that we've known about where Bove is presiding, and basically Ruveni, and there are other people present. If anyone wanted to take this seriously, they easily could. But among other things, we have Bove saying, essentially, if we may need to just ignore court orders, and at one point saying something like, fuck the court. That, of course, is you take an oath to the court, but also to the Constitution. And saying fuck the court, what they'd be saying is ignore what the Constitution requires and violate your oath. And that's what Bove essentially told him to do. There are these other meetings where there's been this that arose, and you may recall in the Adams case involving the New York mayor, where we have Bove also saying all kinds of things that were both factually false and were a violation of his oath to the Constitution. But these are about, in particular, the alien case. And we have, 27 pages of chapter and verse. Big meeting is on March 14th. Remember, that's the day before this whole, that evening, Trump invokes the AEA. The next day, they get the planes, fired and gassed up to send them out, and they probably violate Boasberg's orders. Boasberg is still thinking about that, but they have a meeting the day before. He tells his subordinate that is going to happen. There are, several people in attendance there, so there could be other witnesses. And then he stresses, this is the report, to all in attendance that the planes needed to take off no matter what. That means whatever the court says. And then he expressly broached, again, this is the whistleblower report, the possibility that a court order would enjoin these removals before they could be effectuated. That's what the whistleblower is saying. And he said, well, we're just going to need to consider, the consider is in there, telling the courts, fuck you, and ignore any such order. And then this is like a very high up official in the Department of Justice who's sworn an oath to the Constitution and has just broached the possibility we're going to tell the courts, fuck you, and ignore their orders. What the whistleblower reports is others in the room are stunned. There are awkward, nervous glances among people in the room. Silence overtakes the room. And then they're quickly ushered out of the room, which is another thing we saw in the Adams case, where Bove says some things and then instantly ends the meeting. And then there are factual discrepancies between what he says and what the people in the prosecutors say. But so anyway, Ruveni leaves the meeting still thinking that he's going to tell, we've got to follow court orders because, and he says in the thing, nobody has ever suggested the DOJ could blatantly ignore court orders, especially with an expletive. So I'm in disbelief. And he goes through the whole thing and then continues to talk about we've talked about this some, but it's a pretty opaque view, the real demoralization in the Department of Justice and the different ways in which Bove has just been an enforcer for Donald Trump, which would be one thing if he were enforcing constitutional policies that department attorneys object to. It's their job to salute and go forward. But unconstitutional violations of the oath, lying to the court, you cannot do that. And that Bove said that is a screaming indictment against his being elevated to the Court of Appeals. He's already shown he puts the Constitution second, may continue to with Trump in the presidency. But even if he doesn't, it's really a per se kind of disqualification. Will anything happen? Very unlikely anything will happen within the Department of Justice, which is completely broken. And especially all the whistleblower and remedial functions and offices are just disabled. And we'll see what happens if everyone stays there, they'll have the votes to narrowly confirm Bove. It'll be one of these fights, though. This will come up, this report, by the Dems, and we'll see whether they think they can peel off any Republicans. Assuming they can't, we'll just have this really vulgar demonstration of what should just not happen in this country, where somebody violates the most serious oath, somebody very high up in the Department of Justice, and is, instead of being disciplined, rewarded with a plum judgeship and life tenure. That is a bad day for the rule of law. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.